I'm gonna walk through a couple of these. I just picked out four because it's obviously a long book and I can't go through all of it.
Mhm.
But I picked out four that I really like, and we'll just talk about them a little bit. I'm gonna read just a piece from the principal part of it, and then maybe if it's something that you guys find interesting, then maybe it'll motivate you to go get the book and read it for yourself. But the first principle, like you were just saying, is the concept of extreme ownership.
Okay.
That's principle one, and it's a really hard thing to do, man, because I've read the book. I try to do it in my own life, and you fail at it constantly because it's so easy to slip off, make an excuse, but it's just you're working towards it. That's it. And that's the point of these principles. It's like you're working towards doing it as much as you can, as consistently as you can. And nobody's perfect. Everyone's going to mess up here and there. But the first one is extreme ownership. So I just want to read a piece from the principal part of it. On any team, in any organization, all responsibility for success and failure rests with the leader. So important. The leader must own everything in his or her world. There is no one else to blame. The leader must acknowledge mistakes and admit failures, take ownership of them, and develop a plan to win. The best leaders don't just take responsibility for their job. They take extreme ownership of everything that impacts their mission. This fundamental core concept enables SEAL leaders to lead high-performing teams in extraordinary circumstances and win. But extreme ownership isn't a principle whose application is limited to the battlefield. This concept is the number one characteristic of any high-performance winning team in any military unit, organization, sports team, or business in any industry. As individuals, we often attribute the success of others to luck or circumstance and make excuses for our own failures and the failures of our team. We blame our own poor performance on bad luck, circumstances beyond our control, or poorly performing subordinates, anyone but ourselves. Total responsibility for failure is a difficult thing to accept, and taking ownership when things go wrong requires extraordinary humility and courage. But doing just that is an absolute necessity to learning, growing as a leader, and improving a team's performance. So just from reading that alone, basically you're actually trying to, everything is your fault. Like act, even if you don't think so, act
Dig
like,
deep, man.
yeah, dig deep and act like everything is your fault. Because when everything is your fault, it does so many beneficial things for you.
So the key is don't pretend it's your fault.
That's right.
Go dig deep. So even like I'm going to use an example where you stepped on the ice and you're back checking and the puck went in. Don't automatically, like you're a -1. Don't automatically think that it's not your fault. Like what could you have done better? The bottom line, it might not be your fault, but is there something you could have done better? So that's one example. But
well, but the key in what you said is don't pretend.
Yeah.
Like you're taking extreme ownership.
Yeah.
Like this is a trap that people can fall into. They can pretend like they're taking extreme ownership, but they're not actually, because at the end of the day, they're thinking, well, this guy's still a jackass and didn't do what he was supposed to do, and now I look bad and blah, blah, blah. And that's not what the point of this is. Yeah. The point is like extreme honesty with yourself in where did you mess up to make this go wrong?
Yeah.
And it'll never be a bad thing if you do that.
No.
Never. And if you can apply that to yourself, it'll help you look at other people with more empathy and sympathy, if you want to use that as a term. And it'll just help you be that person that's a glue guy. So when there's an issue that comes up, you can help work through it because you're not throwing ninja stars at people for something that you think they did, because you're internalizing it. And one area where I try to do that, just as a simple life example, is if I'm talking to clients and there's some kind of miscommunication where obviously they didn't get the point, right? Yeah. And I feel like I'm a pretty articulate person. I feel like I explained it as well as I could, but there was some mishap along the way and they don't understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I could right away, I could be like, well, you're an idiot. This is what it is. You didn't read the email.
Told you.
Yeah. It's in the previous email. You didn't read it.
Yeah.
XYZ or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not a helpful strategy, because now this person's going to be like, well, he's a real dick, or that's not like the tone of how you talk to people or whatever. But instead of doing that, I always try to default like, oh, that's my fault. Like my bad for not explaining it clearly enough. Here's what I meant to say or whatever. If you have any other questions, please let me know, kind of thing. Yeah. I always try to default to that so that I'm causing unnecessary conflict with someone who's a client for our business, for example. So that's just one easy example of how to do that. And on the ice, it's the same thing. If you were on a 2-on-1 and should have got a backdoor pass and buddy didn't pass to you, like, don't go back to the bench and be like, hey, ass face, I was wide open and you didn't give me the puck.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey man, sorry, I wasn't in like the best position,
Yeah.
maybe, or
Or
maybe
ask the
yeah,
question.
yeah. Did you see me? Did you see that I was open back door or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
what do you need me to tap? Do you need me to yell? Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
You know, that's the way you address a problem. It's not just like you did this, you did that, whatever. You know.
Yeah. A really good example that happened this year with Charlie's team is they're starting to get in a good role of playing hockey. Right. So a lot of time, and I'm not saying it was easy, but they were in good role winning some games. So they had a road trip and they played in the Sioux. And they went and they lost. They just had a stinker of a game, right? What's that? Yeah, it was like after the first period, it was like 4-5-0 or whatever, maybe 4-5-1 or whatever, and it was just one of those games, and just is what it is sometimes. So I was expecting a typical coach is never their fault, right? Like especially old school guys, what happens is they yell and they scream and they start blaming. And part of coaching is saying, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. We need to be better here, right? But the article that was in the Sioux paper was George was in there and he said, well, simply we didn't come out to play, and that's my fault. So that takes a lot of pressure off the kids. He goes, I obviously didn't prepare these guys, and I got out coached today. I will get them ready for tomorrow. And that's like, yeah, he said he got out coached that day. And that may or may not be true, but in his mind, I believe that he actually meant that day, that he wasn't prepared enough for that game. Didn't get his guys prepared, because as a leader, you are the coach of the team and the general manager and all that kind of stuff. It actually is a lot of your responsibility to make sure they're prepared.
You're the leader, man.
You're the leader.
Yeah.
And he took that responsibility, put it on his shoulders, and took it off the kids. Now, I don't know for a fact, but I assume because he's a very smart and good coach that he spent time with players and went over things and probably had a pissy, like a little bit of piss to him.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
which is okay.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like to lose. But that is great. Now, you can't as a player, you can't look at him and say, yeah, but it wasn't my fault, it was yours. You guys, okay, now I have to take responsibility for what I didn't do or what I did, right? So anyways, that's leadership, man.
Yeah,
and he meant it. He wasn't like, yeah, it's my fault, not the kids.
Yeah.
They started winning a lot.
Yeah. So that leads right into principle number 2.